Thank you for tuning in to the Prosperity for America channel. It's time for our monthly unemployment market update for the United States. We're going to take a look back at July of 2023, and more of the news is more good than bad, but we're going to tell you exactly how it'll affect the market, especially as you're trying to consider whether or not it's a good time for you to look for a new position. First of all, let's take a look at some of the basic numbers that you probably hear, but what we're going to do here in this report is tell you about all of them all in one space rather than just talk about inflation or the unemployment rate. We're going to talk about how they tie in together and why it's a good time overall still to look for a new position here in the United States, because it's always important to know why you do something as opposed to just do it. So, first of all, the unemployment rate at the end of July was 3.5% nationally. Historically, that's definitely above average. The reason being is that over the years, or if you look back since World War II, for example, the average unemployment rate every month has been between 5 and 6% on average. Of course, there's been times when it's been over 10%. We had that happen during COVID. And then there's times when it's below 3%. Actually, a lot of times in the 50s, it was around 2.3, 2.4%. We really were doing well. Now, where we're at is 3.5% unemployment, and let's take a look at where we're going with that. Last week, there were 248,000 new weekly unemployment claims. Now, that number went up by 20,000, and over the last 4 weeks, it averaged 229,000 roughly. And overall, over this last 6 to 10 weeks, that number has been going up, which is why there's been some concern about a recession. But let's talk about what numbers as it relates to the unemployment filings that would be classified to say that we would be having a recession. And that would be 325,000 at our current population size, demographically speaking. And so at 248,000, we're significantly less than 325,000, but we have gone from where, say, if we look back 3 months, where we were at 220 to 210. Sometimes we even hit below 200,000 a little bit during the early part of this year. So it's going up, but not as fast as people think it would have. And but I do also want to make sure you all know there's an unusual factor at this time in the marketplace that's going to be around for a while now, and that is the number of baby boomers that are retiring every day has gone up to 11,000 per day. That's 77,000 per week. So what that means is that 248,000 plus 77 is right at that 325,000 mark. Now, don't think that we're at a tipping point on that particular issue. The reason is that there's always some people retiring. If you go back 4 or 5 years, there was roughly 5,000 people a week retiring, about 20,000 a month. So that number of 325,000 from a standpoint of our demographic size is relative, and it's something that we are moving towards that number, but we're not there yet. And here's some of the encouraging part on the other side of the scale that we could be happy about. And that is that this past month, 9.58 million jobs were paid advertised openings. And the significance of them being paid advertised openings is that companies, we're not talking about openings where they put a sign out in the front of their building. We're not talking about where they put a sign out on the window of their entrance. We're talking 9.58 million jobs were paid advertising, either through the newspaper or on the internet. But employers do not have serious job openings that they don't pay for. In other words, you can walk in and get a part-time job at a lot of places around the country, and that's a beautiful thing. It's just that when you talk about analyzing the economy, that number, 9.58 million paid advertised jobs, is significant. And also, compare it to this. There's at this moment 5.84 million Americans unemployed. Now, if all 5.84 million people found a job tomorrow, that means there would still be 3.7 million jobs in the United States still open. That's very strong. Historically speaking, over the last 60 years, we haven't had very many times that our economy had more openings than unemployed. So, all in all, that's a strong number that we should really take heart with. Now, as far as people changing jobs, last month we reported that 4.2 million Americans quit their job and took another job. That's a very high number. This month, it was still 3.8 million Americans that left their current job and took another job. Overall, the amount of jobs in our economy increased by 187,000 jobs to 161 million people employed in full-time jobs in the United States. Now that 187,000 number is less than last month when we had 240-some thousand as an increase, but nonetheless, again, in a recession, the amount of jobs in the whole economy would be declining, and that's not the case. 187,000 is a little less than we would hope for, but it certainly still is going in the right direction. On another note that we haven't reported in the last few months, the average pay increase this last year for the average American was 6.2%. That's very good. That's very good. It's complicated by the fact that the inflation rate, if you go back the whole 12 months, was not too much different than that. So the standard of living really didn't change, but the fact of the matter is that there was a stronger amount of pay increases this past 12 months than is typical. Typically, when inflation is 5% and pay increases go up 3 or 4%. When inflation is 3 or 4%, pay increases go up 2 or 3%. We pretty well kind of match that. In other words, the inflation rate, if you remember last summer, they were reporting that the inflation rate was growing at 7-8%. And right now we're back down to 4%, and the average probably for the 12 months is probably between 5 and 6%. So it's a good sign that we have not lost ground as a whole, and that's important. It's just totally important. Now, as we look forward and we try to analyze what would be a good thing for us to do, is this a good time for me to change positions? The answer is yes, it's still a very good time to look for a new position. When you look at the markets over time, this market is still better than most. And if it's got a lot of opportunities for people to leave their current position and get a better job. And if people are unemployed, it's a good situation for people to go out and get a job. So we always try with the Prosperity for America channel to try to provide you with information so that you can make good decisions about what to do with your life. Just want to remind you that we also have videos available on the Prosperity for America channel about how with interviewing tips, how to make a better resume, career strategies. Basically, the mission of the Prosperity for America channel is to help Americans find a more prosperous way of making a living, and that's why we do it. So, really thrilled that you tuned in. We'd love for you to subscribe. If you like this video, we'd love for you to subscribe. That way, as we do more videos, you'll get to see them and get a chance to perhaps maybe do a better job on your next interview. Maybe you get a little better offer. That's what we're hoping for. That's what we'd like to see. So we're rooting for everyone. We're rooting for all of us that are trying to make a living and work and pay our bills. So just want to thank you again for listening. Have a great day.